Brotherly Love and the Artic Roll Incident of 1969. The family, such as it was after the father had moved out, was sitting around the dinner table. Auntie Pat, who never said a word and had wanted to be a nun, was at the head of the table, in the place where Dad used to sit. The twins, Frank and Anna, who were both 10.5 years old, sat opposite one another, and Mum took up the helm nearest the door so that she could nip in and out of the kitchen. They were having something new for supper, spaghetti bolognese. While it had been cooking, it had smelled like a lot like the mince and onions they had at school, but this was different, as they'd be eating it with long strings of pasta, nothing like the tins of spaghetti they sometimes had on toast instead of beans. Mum had put the big bowl of pasta and the other smaller bowl of the sauce on the heated hostess trolley she'd recently bought for herself. Then she'd dished up a portion for everyone and carefully added a dusting of the strange powdery cheese that smelled like vomit before handing the plates over. Anna was enchanted by this new development in their menu, by the idea that while ordinary humanity tucked into boring old sausage and mash, or ham with boiled potatoes and glutinous parsley sauce, they were going continental. She was less thrilled by the reality of it, especially the smelly cheese, but enchantment won over taste, and so she slurped and sucked her way through the greasy orange pasta, feeling quite grown up and sophisticated. But despite all this, Anna was distracted by the memory of the honey-coloured teddy bear that she had recently discovered hidden in her brother Frank's room. She knew he had stolen it from their youngest sister, Sheila. Sheila had cried herself to sleep again earlier that evening. The difficulty for Anna was that she had gone into Frank's room without asking permission. She had snooped, she had spied, and yes, she'd found Sheila's teddy, but if she were to tell on Frank, he would just lie and lie and lie, and she couldn't work out how to expose her brother without directly accusing him. Anna thought about Sheila upstairs, nestled in her bed in the box room, her pillows soaked with tears, and she hated Frank all the more. She wished that their mother would discover the toy in the same way she had, by going into his room and finding the teddy bear in his top dresser drawer, hidden under his tan and mustard, red and navy, beige and brown, brine nylon Y-fronts. But Frank was so neat, so tidy, so territorial, it meant that their mother had no reason to storm his room, to enter it like an insane tornado, shouting threats and flinging things about, as she periodically did in Anna's room. Mother left the table and returned minutes later, proudly bearing a plate on which sat that miracle of modernity, an Arctic roll. The Arctic roll was thought to be a most cunning and delicious dessert, mainly because enveloped within a tube of sponge there was a filling of vanilla ice cream. It was not as miraculous as a baked Alaska that Mother told them emerged from the oven with its meringue cooked and its ice cream centre still frozen. But as neither Anna or any of her family had yet tried that dish, it was generally regarded as a myth. Frank and Anna awed appreciatively at the sight of the Arctic roll. They had seen the adverts for it on the television, where it looked a great deal bigger. And now they were about to enter a new age and taste it for themselves. Their mother lifted a knife and was about to begin slicing when Frank, in an act of inspiration and unusual kindness, said pleasantly, "You sit down, Mum, and relax. I'll do that." Their mother gushed with pleasure. "Oh, Frank, thank you, darling," she said. Then, after passing the knife to him, sat back and grinned proudly. Anna knew what this kind deed of her brother's would mean. The smallest portion he could get away with for her, the largest slice for him. She therefore watched him carefully. He cut 2 equal-sized pieces for Pat and Mum and handed them out with a flourish. Then, while Mum and Auntie Pat picked up their spoons and began to poke at the dessert with curiosity, Frank cut the remaining sponge into 2 pieces, one almost 3 inches thick, the remainder barely 1.5 inches, and put them on 2 plates. Finally, knowing Anna was watching, he licked his lips in anticipation of both cake and triumph. Then he lifted a plate in each hand and began the movement that would deliver the small slice to Anna, while he kept the biggest piece for himself. "Mum!" Anna said sharply, indignation giving her voice a grating high note. Their mother had been nibbling at her dessert, completely oblivious to the storm brewing. She dropped her spoon with surprise at Anna's voice. "Mary, Mother of Jesus, don't do that, Anna." "Sorry, Mum." "What is it then?" "Frank's given himself a huge piece of afters and I've only got a tiny bit." Mother looked at Frank. He froze as if shocked by Anna's words, still holding 1 plate in each hand. You'd think he was playing musical statues. But what he was doing was presenting evidence of his innocence. In the moment when their mother was distracted with picking up her spoon, Frank had subtly switched the position of his hands. Now the plate bearing the generous portion of Arctic Roll was proffered to Anna, while the miserly slice was held close to his chest. "Huh?" said Frank. "Let me see," their mother said, standing up to get a good look at both of the plates. "Someone's jumping to conclusions," Mother said in measured tones, and fixed Anna with a hard stare. Then, in a judgment that was Old Testament in its swiftness, Mother took both plates from Frank and crossed her arms over so that Anna now got the tiny piece and Frank the large one. "But Mum," Anna whined. "Be quiet, Anna," Mother snapped. Anna should have recognised the dangerous note in her mother's voice, but somehow she couldn't shut up. "It's not fair," she said. The injustice of it was intolerable. Anna felt the muscles in her chin begin to twitch, dragging the corners of her mouth down. "Not fair? Not fair? I'll show you what's not fair," said Mother in a fury, and she picked up Anna's plate, neatly slid its contents onto Frank's plate, and returned the empty one to Anna. The plate bore witness to Anna's defeat, a smear of ice cream and a couple of crumbs. "There," said Mother, brushing her hands together with grim satisfaction. "Now, that's not fair." Anna looked at her empty plate, then folded her arms and glared at Frank. He was pursing his lips and sucking his cheeks in, trying to hold back a laugh. Seeing Anna glare at him clearly inspired him to further evil. "Oh, Mum," he said, "poor Anna hasn't got any now. Serves her right." "Here you are, Anna," said Frank, brotherly love oozing like saccharin from every pore and orifice. He picked up the smallest slice of the cake with his spoon and leaned across the table, ready to drop it onto Anna's plate. She could not eat it now, polluted as it was by her brother's mock concern and mother's scorn. She raised her palm, meaning no. But as she did it, Frank's hand jerked violently and the cake sailed off the spoon, arced at speed past Mother's head and landed with a barely audible splat on a china figurine called Top of the Hill. Anna's hand had not touched the proffered spoon, but somehow Frank had made it look as if she had. Mother's mouth dropped open. The china figure with her billowing scarlet crinoline rocked wildly and made a faint grinding noise. Auntie Pat thrust out her hands uselessly as though she might somehow catch it or stop its giddy dance. Curiously, it was the momentum of its dangerous rocking that kept the object upright for a few seconds while they watched. Anna, being the ignorant one, didn't know this at the time, but later she heard Frank explaining it to their mother. The momentum kept it upright, he explained, despite the fact that the object's centre of gravity had been shifted. But when it slowed, as the laws of science decreed it must, it would fall. And fall it did, crashing onto the fireplace in an explosion of red shards. No one doubted that Anna had knocked Frank's hand away, causing the whole tragedy. Mum felt that it was entirely deliberate. Frank said, "I'm sorry, Mum. I just wanted Anna to have some cake." Auntie Pat got up and began picking up bits of broken china. She placed them carefully in the palm of her cupped hand. As usual, she said nothing. It wasn't that Auntie Pat couldn't speak, it was just that most of the time she didn't. Anna watched her down on her hands and knees like a nun. Frank had resumed eating. He had an air of pious satisfaction about him. A sudden high-pitched wail erupted from upstairs. "Tedda!" Sheila cried. "One Tedda!" "Well, that's all I need," said Mother, pushing her chair back and heading out of the room. Frank was eating very slowly, licking his spoon in an exaggerated way and making noises. He was watching Anna all the time, wanting to catch her eye, to be certain of an envious audience. Anna looked away. She watched Auntie Pat, who was still kneeling on the floor, her left hand full of bits of broken ornament and dripping ice cream. Maybe one day Auntie Pat would notice all the bad things Frank did. Maybe she was an emissary from God and was keeping watch on them. Perhaps she had a little notebook in which she kept stock. It would explain her silence. Auntie Pat's hair was blue-black like their mother's. There was always a packet of sea witch hair dye on the go in the bathroom. Anna thought it was an unsuitably named product for such pious sisters as her mother and Auntie Patricia, but she assumed all of this was dealt with in confession. "Oh, this is the best ever," declared Frank. The wailing from upstairs had softened into disconsolate murmurs and hiccups. Auntie Pat's left hand was now full of smashed china. Anna watched as Pat gazed at it in wonder, then sat back on her haunches and did a quick genuflexion with her free hand. Her lips were moving, silently mouthing the words that no one ever heard. Auntie Pat read the Bible every day. Auntie Pat had never married. Auntie Pat had moved in the day after their father moved out. She wasn't much of a substitute. Her presence was ghost-like and ineffectual. She did her best, but couldn't cook, couldn't clean, couldn't make beds, never smiled. Even now she was making a calamity of picking up the broken ornament, slowly plucking bits of it from the carpet and dropping them into her open hand. Anna thought she should help, should fetch the brush and dustpan from the kitchen, but was afraid of doing something wrong again. Her aunt seemed to be moving more and more slowly, gazing with narrow-eyed concentration at each bit that she added to her hand. Then just when Anna thought her aunt would get up and throw the bits in the kitchen bin and maybe get the floor cloth, she watched transfixed as her aunt closed her fingers around the broken shards, her hand shaking as she increased the pressure, until at last a drop of crimson blood was wrung from the scarlet china and fell to the carpet below in a pool of melted ice cream. Auntie Pat turned suddenly and met Anna's gaze. She nodded slowly, then smiled a slightly crooked Mona Lisa smile, and Anna suddenly understood. Her aunt did see all and know all, and surely was a saint.